consequently, the Conservatives did not realise what was happening on the cultural front. They didn't realise that education was being redefined from the transmission of a culture down through the generations to teaching your children that your culture was fundamentally illegitimate, racist, and should be obliterated. They didn't realise that was going on. They didn't realise that the freedom to junk your husband, the freedom to have a baby without a father, even without the baby even knowing who his father was, and perhaps you didn't know who the father was, that freedom would come with a terrible cost to the child and to the woman and also to the man. They didn't figure all that out, and all sorts of other stuff. So they just lost the plot. And then, having vacated the cultural battleground, they then observed that society was changing in that direction. And then they said, oh, we can't do anything to stop this. It's like Canute holding back the tide. We must go with the flow of cultural change.
When you see what is happening across the world right now and how liberalism has sort of failed, and that what that then probably leads to is sort of some version of right-wing authoritarianism or something like that, if you agree with that premise, what can we do? If you want to save liberalism right now, what can people do?
Well, it's this paradox, again, that to save liberalism, you have to be conservative. And I do believe that the problem, that the sort of death throes of liberalism have been caused not just by the what's happened to the left or the progressive circles in the West, but by the fact that the people who are supposed to be defending the West against this onslaught have thrown in the towel a long time ago, largely through ignorance. There are not precise parallels between British Conservatives and American Republicans, but nevertheless there are certain, I think, constant characteristics that the conservative wing of politics, if I can put it that way, has forgotten what it is in business to conserve. And especially, I think, since the fall of the Soviet Union, which I think was taking place before the Berlin Wall actually fell. The Soviet Union clearly was, in its death throes for a long time before that. And I think that what happened was that that conservatively minded individuals, or certainly conservative politicians, the conservative political class, when the Soviet Union fell, it sort of thought, oh, our fox has been shot. What do we do now? We've won. Here is, the Soviet Union having disintegrated. It's no longer a threat. Everyone's bought into the market. Now, the problem with conservatives is that they tend to think entirely in terms of economics. They don't think in terms of culture. They don't understand what Edmund Burke understood during the French Revolution. It's all about culture. It's all about values. It's all about moral values. They don't think like that. And they haven't thought like that for years. So they thought, well, what do we do now? Everyone's bought into the market. What are we going to hang our hat on now? And they alighted upon freedom. And I remember this happening at the time, and I thought, oh no, they've had it. This is ridiculous, because the left hung its hat on freedom. So what happened was that while the left venerated and worshipped the shrine of personal, individual freedom, freedom to do exactly what I like, behave as I like, have the values that I like, and no one can tell me that I'm wrong, conservatives said that everything that's good in the world is going to be delivered by the free market. Mm-hmm. And consequently, the Conservatives did not realise what was happening on the cultural front. They didn't realise that education was being redefined from the transmission of a culture down through the generations to teaching your children that your culture was fundamentally illegitimate, racist, and should be obliterated. They didn't realise that was going on. They didn't realise that the freedom to junk your husband, the freedom to have a baby without a father, without the baby even knowing who his father was, and perhaps you didn't know who the father was, that freedom would come with a terrible cost to the child and to the woman, and also to the man. They didn't figure all that out, and all sorts of other stuff. So they just lost the plot. And then, having vacated the cultural battleground, they then observed that society was changing in that direction. And then they said, oh, we can't do anything to stop this. It's like Canute holding back the tide. We must go with the flow of cultural change. And so they became part of the problem. And that's why liberalism was allowed to become the kind of monster that it has become, which is illiberalism, or as somebody who was a very distinguished thinker once coined the term, and it's so true, cultural totalitarianism is what we're living through.
My friend Michael Malice, who's a brilliant political thinker, he's more of like a anarchist type, but he says that conservatism is just liberalism at the speed limit, which I think is partly what you're getting to there. Do you sense that something has shifted, though? Because I do sense right now that it's partly because of Trump, maybe 90% because of Trump, although maybe Trump is just a symptom of it, but that conservatives have started to understand the cultural part. I think there is a sense of, if you look online, the things that are fun and funny and the memes and comedy, the left has destroyed all of these things through its totalitarian view. And the things that are actually interesting right now are things that are coming out of more right-leaning circles. Do you credit Trump for breaking through that thing in a way that the conservatives would have never done otherwise?
I think the election of Donald Trump was the outcome of a change that had already taken place. That is to say, I think that there were two shoes that fell, if that's the right metaphor, in 2016. One was the Brexit vote in Britain, and the other was the election of Donald Trump. And on both occasions, I think what happened, obviously they're very different phenomena, different countries, but they were fueled by the same thing, which was that the vast bulk of ordinary people, the millions and millions and millions of, when I say ordinary people, I mean the kind of people who don't have typically a higher university education, and who had spent decades being preached at and being scorned and being vilified and being traduced by the intelligentsia, which dominates completely the universities and the media and the whole cultural apparatus. And more than that, dominated politics, because even so-called conservatives, the Conservative Party in Britain, the Republicans in America, didn't really differ that much in these cultural issues from the left. And they were all basically saying to the people, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just rednecks. You're just stupid. Mm-hmm. You don't even have a university education. You're bigoted. You don't like immigrants. You're racist. So the things that ordinary people value, which is community, which is the attachment to their country, patriotism, love of their country, and the kind of instinctive understanding that a country and a culture is made up of people who share your own values. They don't have to look like you. They can be different colour faces from you. They can be of different ethnic backgrounds from you. But at some important juncture, they share the most important values of that society and that culture, which means that you're all basically sharing the same cultural experience. You're all attached to the nation. You all understand what it means to you. Now, that understanding, that cultural attachment, was vilified as racist and xenophobic by virtually the entire political class.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about the media instead of nonstop yelling, check out our media playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, check out the full episode playlist. They're both right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.